Urgent, the sky suddenly lit up. The Ukrainian armed forces delivered an aerial execution to the Russians. 2 fighter jets downed at once. A Patriot missile struck right at the heart of Russian aviation. The Sukhois, along with their pilots, went down. And this is just the tip of the iceberg, the decisive call from Macron. A massive boost for the Ukrainian armed forces. France is lifting all taboos and handing Ukraine a decisive trump card. Tomahawks aimed at Moscow. The Russian capital is now within the strike zone. The Pentagon has leaked the plan for a final strike that will destroy the Russian Federation. All this and more coming up. Watch until the end. Ukraine welcomes you today. Rinat Aslanov here with the latest updates. In an emergency, the Ukrainian armed forces carried out an aerial execution of the occupier. 2 Russian fighter jets were shot down at once. The Su-30 and Su-34, from which the enemy had been bombarding Ukraine with guided aerial bombs. Near Snake Island, one of the Russian planes crashed into the sea. Enemy social media channels are hysterically admitting it. The fighter jet was taken down by an American Patriot air defense system. It is reported that the crew of one of the planes presumably did not survive. It is specifically the Su-34 that is the main aircraft from which the Russian army uses guided aerial bombs against Ukrainian positions.
This is a very valuable target, which is always approached with caution. From many kilometers away from the danger zone, they would drop these bombs on the heads of our soldiers and then turn back. But not today. Together with the crew, they won't be doing anything anymore. Nothing bad for us, and
it seems there will be more and more bad news for the Russians. This has been officially confirmed. Volodymyr Zelensky announced that Ukraine is receiving new batches of aircraft, air defense missiles and aerial bombs from France. A decisive call with Macron and military aid is increasing significantly. Paris is going all in. After the conversation, Macron made a tough statement. France will support Ukraine for as long as it takes. The leaders discussed the front line, Russian strikes on a passenger train, peace negotiations, and the strike on Russia's shadow fleet. Pressure on the aggressor is reaching a new level.
Emmanuel spoke about the corresponding work being done at the legislative level. We are counting on important decisions.
Earlier, there were also statements that the Ukrainian and French sides had agreed on an additional delivery of a Mirage aircraft. We can't hide our anticipation for this powerful reinforcement. Paris has sent a clear signal.
Ukraine can count on France in defending against Russian aggression, in achieving a just and lasting peace, in building reliable security guarantees.
But that's not all. A sensation, the Pentagon is secretly loading the famous Tomahawks for Ukraine. Behind the scenes, a decision is being prepared that could turn the tables right in the midst of the negotiation process. In
Washington, they are pushing to provide Ukraine with Tomahawk missiles to create a strategic leverage in negotiations.
Former advisor to the Commander-in-Chief of the Ukrainian Armed Forces, Dan Rice, held talks with U.S. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth regarding this initiative. We're talking about the use of missiles with a range of up to 4,000 kilometers, which could radically change the balance of power. Russia's deep rear becomes vulnerable and the Kremlin finds itself under serious pressure, forced to seek concessions. Moreover, Kiev has already used a similar tactic with other weaponry, so a déjà vu could occur. In
November 2023, Ukraine launched ATACMS missiles for the first time and destroyed 24 Russian Ka-52 attack helicopters. Moscow immediately withdrew all its helicopters from Crimea and rewrote its combat plans. A few Tomahawk missiles will do the same. The range is so great that Russia simply cannot protect all of its critical assets. And
one more decisive statement straight from the heart of the Pentagon. Ukraine should no longer have to ask for these missiles. Their delivery to Kiev should be demanded in Europe, the US Senate, and the media.
Tomahawks in Ukrainian hands would prove to the world only one thing: there is no alternative.
A French fist for Kyiv. The sky over the Russian rear will turn into hell. Macron lifts the taboo and delivers deadly weapons. Urgently, Paris is going all in. A missile rain on Russia's rear. France has officially confirmed its readiness to hand over a trump card to the Ukrainian armed forces. All the details, watch now.
Ukraine and France are strengthening their military cooperation. Ukraine's Defense Minister Mikhailo Fedorov discussed strengthening air defense with his French counterpart Catherine Vautrin. Deliveries of Mirage 2005 fighter jets and missiles. Ukraine can count on France for protection against Russian aggression, for achieving a just and lasting peace, and for establishing reliable security guarantees, Vautrin wrote on social media X after the conversation ended.
Still, we have to understand that every country has its own interests. And in this case, I think that France, both because of the situation in the Sahel region and because of the risks to the European Union, and France, no matter what, is one of the two leaders of the European Union, along with Germany. That is, the threats and risks that Russia poses to the EU are still there. They haven't gone anywhere. So I think that, after all, despite France's ongoing attempts to establish a dialogue with Russia, which we constantly see, the basis of these attempts is not some kind of sympathy for Russia, but rather an effort to appear as a player on the global political stage.
It was also announced that France will supply additional domestically produced missiles and fighter jets. This will happen in the near future.
First of all, it should be understood that over the 4 years of the full-scale war, France has repeatedly tried to be the most active player in supporting Ukraine, and it has proposed ideas that were significantly different from those put forward by the United States of America. Under the previous administration, the United Kingdom also sometimes took the lead in supporting Ukraine.
Defense Minister Fedorov thanked the French side for many years of consistent cooperation and for their significant contribution to the development of Ukraine's air defense and aviation capabilities. According to him, this partnership is already working to protect Ukraine's skies.
France wants to demonstrate in practice that Europe is capable of much, even without the United States. And since they needed something to demonstrate this with, they decided it would be Ukraine, specifically military aid to Ukraine. So now, when everyone thinks that without the US, Ukraine might not be able to withstand the war, France says, well, we'll step in instead. The US, you think it's impossible, but we believe it's possible.
At the moment, the French can strengthen the Ukrainians with air defense systems and counter new technological threats.
That's why I think this demonstrative desire to show the United States that issues can be resolved even without them is driving the kind of developments we're seeing in France.
In addition, Ukraine and France discussed the issue of countering the Russian shadow fleet. The Ukrainian Minister of Defense invited his French counterpart to visit Kyiv.
Urgently, Zelensky has called Putin to a decisive battle at the negotiating table in the IZS territory in Cannes. An explosion in global diplomacy. Ukraine is ready to take the most dangerous and fateful step of the entire war. Sibiha laid his cards on the table. This shocked everyone. Details in the report.
Ukrainian Foreign Minister Sibiha stated that President Zelensky is ready for a personal meeting with Putin to resolve issues regarding the territory and future control over the Zayas. According to experts, such a statement should not be interpreted literally.
That's why now, when Zelensky says he's ready to meet with Putin, he understands that it's just a figure of speech. That is, I'm ready, but what about you? Zelensky's main message was delivered a day earlier, namely that we've already made our compromise. Now it's your turn to make compromises, Russians. We agreed to a ceasefire. This means we agreed to temporarily leave part of Ukraine's territory under Russian occupation. That's a huge compromise.
News about a possible meeting between Zelensky and Putin surfaces periodically after US President Trump personally expressed his desire to organize it.
There is a very good chance that they will meet. We haven't decided exactly where yet, but we had a very good conversation with President Putin. And now we really have a chance to put an end to this whole story. This path has been long and remains long, but there is a chance that a meeting will take place very soon.
After that, Putin stated directly that there would be no point in the meeting since he does not want to back down from his intention to occupy Ukraine.
After all, not so long ago, the leadership of the Kyiv regime, to be continued, let's just say, have spoken rather unflatteringly about us and ruled out any possibility of direct contacts. Now we see that they are asking for these contacts. In any case, they are proposing them. I don't see much point. Why? Because it will be practically impossible to reach an agreement with the Ukrainian side on key issues. But
if Trump himself says that Zelensky and Putin hate each other, then how can they come to an agreement? All right, let's say they arrange a meeting between them. And then what? Will this meeting bring peace? If Putin's position doesn't change, or Zelensky's position, then there won't be any kind of breakthrough.
But on the other hand, the Russian dictator is afraid of the reaction from the US president and literally squirms like a snake on a frying pan, repeatedly singing the same tune, saying he's ready for anything but only in Moscow, fully understanding that no one will go to Russia.
The Ukrainian side wants this meeting and is proposing it. I said, I'm ready. Please come over. We will absolutely provide the conditions for work and ensure safety. A 100% guarantee. But if we're told, we want our own meeting, so you go there for it, I think these are simply excessive demands being made of us.
For Putin, it's very important to keep supporting this idea for one simple reason. He wants to say that by engaging in peace talks, he's doing Trump a favor. In reality, I don't need any peace negotiations. I'll take over all of Ukraine sooner or later anyway. But since I respect you, I'm willing to stop if they finally come to their senses at all.
As for the Ukrainian president, he has repeatedly stated that he is ready to meet at any time and in any neutral country if it will help end the war.
A meeting is necessary, it is a requirement. We have supported any format, trilateral and bilateral. I think Russia is doing everything it can to postpone this. We see no desire to end the war. Regarding meetings, leaders must produce results from such high-level talks, preferably the end of the war.
Of course, some experts are quite skeptical about the idea of a meeting between Zelensky and the Russian dictator.
A personal meeting by itself will not achieve anything. Moreover, it could even make the situation worse. Because this mutual rejection, this mutual emotion of hatred, it's not just an emotion of hatred between two leaders, but already between two peoples, between the warring states. That's why I believe that this meeting will not be a decisive turning point. Maybe in 2022, it could have helped somehow. Now it's unlikely.
But some analysts still believe that the possibility of a meeting has emerged, but only if the next round of negotiations is successful and specific points of the peace plan are agreed upon.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine Today. Join us now. Shock. Washington is preparing a deadly surprise for Putin. The Pentagon has given the green light Tomahawks aimed at Moscow. This happened right after the negotiations. Here's what was actually agreed upon. Kyiv will get a real weapon of retaliation, a hard knockout from Trump. More details coming up.
Tomahawks for the armed forces of Ukraine in the US, a new strategy to pressure the Kremlin. Washington is discussing a plan to strike deep into Russia to force Putin to make peace.
I suspect that I cannot contribute any new information to this topic.
A small group of Ukraine supporters in Washington claims that the only way to force the Russian dictator to the negotiating table is to significantly strengthen Kyiv's position, and this can be done with Tomahawk missiles.
As last year's experience showed, as soon as Tomahawk missiles were even mentioned in the United States, immediately, Putin began to display the highest level of constructiveness, or rather constructive behavior, and tried in every possible way to show that he wanted peace. But as soon as Putin realized that there was no chance of Tomahawk missiles appearing in Ukraine, that was it. After that, the campaign to destroy Ukraine's energy infrastructure and terrorize Ukrainian cities began.
At the center of this initiative is Dan Rice, president of the American University in Kyiv and former special advisor to the commander-in-chief of the armed forces of Ukraine, who held a meeting with the U.S. Secretary of Defense, according to Kyiv Post.
Putin only responds to force. If he does not agree to peace, then in my opinion, there is a high likelihood that President Trump will approve the use of Tomahawks.
Rice refused to share details of the meeting, calling most of the conversation confidential. However, he did reveal what exactly he was proposing. According to him, he directly asked the Minister of Defense to provide Ukraine with Tomahawks, even if it was a small, undisclosed quantity.
Even if we are given 20, 30 or 50 missiles, it won't make much of a difference. We need hundreds of missiles per month to have at least some kind of parity with the Russian Federation. And now for the latest figures. The Russians launch per month about 300 different types of missiles at Ukraine each month. We need to launch at least as many, preferably more. Only then can we really put pressure on the Russian Federation.
Ukraine tried to obtain these missiles from the US even during Biden's term, but up to now, Tomahawks have still not been delivered to the Ukrainian army.
It is believed, again, we don't know for sure, but rumor has it. Online sources say that the United States of America can produce about 100 missiles per year. 100 missiles a year. So, for the average person, it might seem, well, 100, that sounds like a lot. 100 missiles, that's a lot, right? But let's look at it from another angle. The cost of each rocket. According to various estimates, it could be $2 million per missile or $4 million, as, for example, the Americans sold to Japan at one time. That is, for yourself it's 2 with some change, but for the Japanese it's 4.25. $1 million for one rocket. That is, these are large sums. It would seem that if the problem is not money, then the problem is quantity.
Therefore, whether Trump will approve the supply of Tomahawks remains an open question. At the same time, some officials believe that American missiles could indeed become a lever of influence on Russia in the negotiation process. Others fear that the transfer of Tomahawks, on the contrary, will undermine diplomatic efforts.
If the United States had clearly stated that in the event Russia destroys Ukraine's energy infrastructure, Ukraine would receive Tomahawk missiles, I guarantee that nothing like what is happening now would have occurred. But the United States has a different approach. They are trying to persuade Putin in a friendly way to maintain good relations with him, and everything is along those lines. Therefore, to be honest, I don't really believe that the United States under Trump would give Ukraine Tomahawk missiles.
Let us recall that American Tomahawk cruise missiles have the capability to store up to 15 pre-programmed targets in their memory, and they can change their target mid-flight as well as carry either nuclear or conventional warheads.
What do you think about the latest events? Share your opinion in the comments, like the video, and stay up to date with the main news. There's more to come. Cheryl,